Today's daf is daf Samach, and we're dealing with the issue of nursing, of Hanukah, which is very important, especially back at the time of the Gemara. And the last few words on daf Nun Testament Beis, Im Hoya Makira, if the baby, the infant, recognizes his mother, and he got used to nursing from his mother, then she will have to continue nursing even after she was divorced. Normally, Hanukah is viewed within the context of T'nai Ksuba, and it's part of the Ishus relationship, and that's our obligation vis-a-vis our husband, the father of this babe. But now, after Gerushin, that relationship has terminated, the Ishus is gone, and within the context of Ishus, there's no obligation on her part to nurse the baby. And that is because the Ishus has terminated with get. But nevertheless, she has a relationship to the baby, and the baby's life might be even in danger, and therefore she has to continue nursing even after the Gerushin. And her husband would have to pay her a salary, as was Mekubal in those days, for nursing. So now we start the daf for today. Ad Kama. The Gemara wants to know, at what point in the life of the baby do we say that the baby is, shall we say, developed enough, mature enough, that he got used to his mother's breastfeeding, and therefore his life might be in danger if she would terminate the Hanukah? Amar Rav, Amar Rav Yomi, Bar Ab, Amar Rav, Shlosha Chadashim. If for a 3-month period of time the baby has been nursing, the baby gets used to that mother, to his mother, and Shmuel Amar Shloshim Yom. It's enough that after 30 days of this newborn babe's life of nursing, that the child might get used to his mother and refuse to nurse from another woman. But Yitzchak Amar Rav Yochanan comes up with a sort of compromise shita, Chamishim Yom, 50 days since the birth of the child. Amar Rav Shimi Bar Abaye, Halacha Rav Yitzchak, Sha'amar Mishum Rav Yochanan. So we accept la halacha according to this tradition attributed to Rav Shimi, that if the baby is 50 days old, then we can assume that the baby got used to its mother's milk, and therefore she'll be obligated to continue nursing despite the fact that she's divorced. The Gemara analyzes this machlokas. Bishleim, Rav, I understand, Rav, 3 months. That's a significant period of time. Rabbi Yochanan, 50 days. Kol chad v'chad ki chorfei. Every child is a little bit different, and it reflects the charifus, his havana, his maturity and his development. And there are those who recognize and get used to their mother's milk earlier, younger, and those at a later age. Hello, Shmuel, but 30 days. Is it really feasible that a child who's only 30 days old, at that early stage in his life, already recognizes his mother's milk? And because of this question, the Gemara rejects Shmuel. Ki asa Rami bar Yechezkel Amar lo titzi sinu lahani kloli dekayel. Don't listen to those principles, and he's alluding to this one as far as Hanukah is concerned, of Yehuda Achi, of my brother Yehuda, Nishmei de Shmuel, in the name of Shmuel. If you recall, we did not know who had actually transmitted this halacha in the name of Shmuel. We thought it was Shmuel himself. Now we find out from Rami bar Yechezkel, the brother of Yehuda, that it was actually Yehuda who had transmitted this statement, this principle, in the name of Shmuel. But rather, Hachi Omar Shmuel. Shmuel made a different statement. He never said 30 days, but rather, Kol Zman Shemakira. We have to see in every particular case, and the Gemara is going to give us a test, how you actually evaluate this in the child's life, when the child recognizes his mother. And therefore, Shmuel never wanted to pin it down, neither to 50 days, nor to 3 months. He did not set it up as a standard. Would there be a child that recognized his mother after 30 days, again, it would be a very, very unusual situation, but the halacha would kick in. So any transmission in the name of Shmuel about 30 days was misunderstood. Shmuel didn't say that after 30 days, the absolute assumption in all cases would be that the child is makir esimo. No, it would depend on the child, and there could be a harifus of a child that even at the age of 30 days recognizes his mother. So now the Gemara wants to know, how did Shmuel go about checking in every single case, if it's a subjective issue, whether or not the baby recognizes his mother's milk to the exclusion of any other woman's milk? There was a case of a woman who got divorced, and she came in Shmuel, and she wanted to know if she could get away without nursing. You know, she was married, and in the context of marriage of Isha, she nursed the baby. Now she's divorced. Does she have an obligation? Can her ex-husband force her to continue nursing? Amalei Ravdimi bar Yosef. Shmuel turns to Ravdimi and he says, I want you to be my proxy and implement the following test to examine the baby. Zil b'doka. Go and check out the baby and determine if the baby is dependent upon its mother and recognizes its mother to the exclusion of other mothers. Azal, so Ravdimi went ahead. Osva b'dore dinoshi. He took this woman, the mother of the baby, and put her up in a line. This is like, when you have criminals, you get the mugshot, you know what I mean? So put this woman up in a line with all the other women. The Shakli Libra, and he took the baby. Bra literally means bina, a child. It could be a male, it could be a female. And he took the baby, holding the baby, and passed the baby through this line of mothers. When the baby passed its own biological mother, the Grusha who's coming to ask the question from Shmuel, the child looks at the face of its mother. And the mother was, I guess, a little embarrassed at this point because she had to admit that the baby recognized her. She sort of turned her eyes downward out of a sense of like busha. And perhaps she thought that by covering her eyes, closing her eyes, maybe the baby wouldn't recognize her. Amar Allah, so Ravdimi said to this woman, Nitof enech, raise your eyes, and kum deri brech, and stand up and take your baby, carry your baby. In Hebrew, we would say se'i b'nech, which has homiletic meaning as well, but carry your baby because the baby recognizes you and you're obligated to nurse the baby. The Gemara asks, Suma mino yoda. What if never the baby is blind? Rachmana litzlan. The baby will not see its mother. Is there another way that the baby might have gotten attached to its mother as a yonekes, even though the baby is blind? And the Gemara says, yes, on Rav Ashi, Berecha ubetama. Recha ubetama in Hebrew is reach and tam. And what it means is that the baby, and especially a blind baby, never has a very keen sense of smell and will smell out his mother and recognize her smell. Not only that, but tam recognizes the taste of the milk of its mother and knows that this is its mother's milk, will not be eager to suckle from another woman. And I don't know, Rabbi, if you have a chance, not now, but to go on to Google, I just didn't have a chance to do this, and determine if there's really a difference of taste between one woman's milk and another. I'm absolutely convinced that you'll find that there is. We learned in the Brisa, a baby is assumed to want to nurse for 24 months. And therefore, we're going to allow this nursing to continue till the baby is 2 years old. And the Brisa now quotes the opinion of the Tanakama that not more than 2 years. It's not a healthy thing for the baby to continue nursing after 2 years, but 2 years, yes. And this is brought down, by the way, the poskim in a different context. And it has an impact on the question of Nishamish b'moch. To what age of the baby would the parents be allowed to use contraception so as not to undermine the nursing of the baby? And this opinion would give it almost an automatic 2-year period of time. We'll see later on that there's an opinion of Rabbi Yeshua that allows nursing for even 4 or 5 years. And the parents have a primary responsibility to the child that's here in the world, alive and well, and nursing, even though they have a mitzvah period to bring more children in the world. And this is a famous tshuva of Rav Henkin. Do you remember the name of Henkin? Before Moshe Feinstein's, Rav Henkin was the final word in Psak Halacha in America. When he passed away, my father, Zichron Baruch, had a lot of trouble. He couldn't get used to Rav Moshe because he was so used to Rav Henkin. Rav Henkin was also the president of Ezra's Torah. In any event, we can't be able to yomek shekets. From the age of 24 months and on, we do not encourage, in fact, we prohibit on a Drabanan level, Yenika. It's like yomek shekets. Now, shekets is a very strong word. It's a heftzah d'isura. I don't know if that's what the Gemara has in mind. It could be that it's psychologically, according to this opinion, harmful for the child to continue nursing at that mature, so to speak, age. Now, this Tanakama is identified as Rabbi Eliezer. However, Rabbi Yeshua Omer, he disagrees. Afilu arba v'chamesh shadet. We can allow her and maybe even encourage her to continue nursing till the baby is 4 or 5 years old. And I know of a case that this actually happened. Hey, Rash. However, to some extent, Rabbi Yeshua has an overlap with Rabbi Eliezer. And he agrees with Rabbi Eliezer that even at an earlier age, before the child is 4 or 5, we have to make sure that the nursing terminates. And that's the case of Perish. Perish means that the baby has stopped nursing, took a break from nursing, we'll see how long of a break, and then wants to resume nursing. The mother wants to resume nursing. But if it's li'achar esrim v'arba chodesh, if the baby is already 24 months old, 2 years old, and the baby has stopped nursing, v'chazar, and now the baby wants to nurse again, once it's taken an interruption, then even Rabbi Yeshua would agree to Rabbi Eliezer, ki yonek shekets. That's not allowed. Omar Ma, Rabbi Eliezer said in the Brisa Mikan, from the age of 24 months and on, ki yonek shekets, or a minu will ask a stira from another Brisa. Yachol, the Brisa says, I might think Yehech Cholav, Chalev Mahal Chishtaim, Tomei. The Gemara actually presents a Havamina that the milk of a mother, of a human mother, that's called Mahal Chishtaim, she walks on 2 feet as opposed to a behemoth, is Tomei. Now, I'm not sure if in this Havamina it means that the mother's milk is a hefter d'isur for everyone. That would seem to be impossible because that would undermine the possibility of nursing. But maybe it means if that they collected the mother's milk in a cup, it might be prohibited for you and me to drink that milk. And the Brisa gives a logical din, a logical argument as to why we had such a Havamina and we need a pasuk, lafuke, this Havamina. The din. Din usually refers to a Kal Vachomer. The dinu. Uma behema, if you have a non-kosher animal, like a pig, for example, or a camel, and its milk is tamid, you're not allowed to drink the milk of a non-kosher animal. She kalta b'maga'a, and yet if we compare the status of an animal to a human being, in terms of Tumah V'Tara, we will find a kula in an animal case. Why? Because if you touch a non-kosher animal, you do not contract tumah. And the Torah hechmarta b'chalava, but yet the Torah considers the milk of a non-kosher animal to be tameh, to be asur. Adam, ichmarta b'mago, that means if a woman is tmeya tumas zav, zava, or yoledes, and you come in contact with that woman through maga, that's called tumas maga, you contract tumah, is a ludin shetach b'chalava. How much more so in the case of a human being, you should prohibit the challah, the milk. And by the way, this kal v'chomer, this logic or dinhu, is very difficult to understand. The Havamim itself is difficult because the reason why the chalav of a behemoth tmeya is asur is because of a different principle, which is called yotzei mina asur asur. That which comes out, the extract of something that's asur, is prohibited. Gemara has a whole sugya in the Masechet Chulin and Bechoros about what is the reason we're allowed to eat honey. Honey is also a case of yotzei mina asur asur. It's produced by a bee. So the Gemara goes back and forth. Is it really yotzei? Is it really, is it really something that is produced by the bee or not? In any event, obviously this logic of yotzei, this principle would not apply in the case of cholav ha'em, of a human being. Now, although a human being is not what you call a kosher animal, we don't eat human flesh, cannibalism is prohibited, but it's not really what you call a heftzeh d'isura. So, for example, as gory as it sounds, if a human being, a Jewish person, would only be able to save his life by eating human flesh of a deceased body, that would be perfectly mutter. In any event, Talmud Lomar, so how do we know that the Torah would allow drinking milk, human milk? And here we have a miyut from an extra word in the pasuk as hagamal kimal legera hu. The Torah added the word hu, and it's a superfluous word, and it's coming as a miyut, as an exclusion. Hu tameh, the aim chalev mahalche shtayim tameh elatov. You're not allowed to drink the milk of a camel, which is a behemoth that's holy chal arba. But the who excludes the milk of a human being. So now the brisa continues. Yochel, I might think that otzi es hacholav. I might exclude the cholav of a woman from the Isur of cholav behemoth meah, and we'd be matir drinking the milk of a human being based on the following kula. She'eno shove bakol. What does that mean? In animals, the milk of animals is not prohibited. It could be prohibited if the animal itself is a behemoth meah, but the milk of a behemoth tahora is mutter. And now the Gemara thinks that perhaps I should find the following kula in cholav behemoth, and that is that not all animals generate an isur cholav. It all depends upon whether the mother is a behemoth meah or behemoth tahora. So that's a kula called eno shove bakol. We've seen this many times. Like, for example, we have Havamidas that the laws of Kahuna would not kick in because it's not an isur shove bakol. So where is this brisa taking us in this halamina? Lo otzi es hadam shehu shava bakol. So what that would mean is that the reason why the Torah excluded chalav adam, chalav isha, from the Isur chalav is because the special miyut of who is coming to exclude chalav isha. But we're not going to use that who to exclude dam ha'isha, dam ha'adam. Why? Because who shava b'kol? Because we don't have that kula in behema that we found with regard to cholav. Behema, we differentiated between cholav of behema tahora as opposed to behema tmeya. But in dam, it makes no difference whether the animal is kosher or not. But rather the dam is always asur, even the dam of a behema tahora. And therefore, I would come to the conclusion that dam ha'adam should be asur, because in the case of cholav, we found a kula in chalav behema. And that kula was the springboard to allow darshaning who to be mamayit cholav isha, but we don't have that license to exclude dam ha'adam based on the kula of behema of Eina Shava B'Kol, because as far as dam is concerned, behema is classified as Shava B'Kol. That means that the dam of behema tahora, no less than that of a tmeya, is also Tamalomar who. And again, we come back to that same extra superfluous word who as a mute. Who tame, the ein dam mahalchi shtayim tame, elator. And we're saying the following, that in the case of a behema tmeya, we found that the cholav of a behema tmeya, the Torah is outspoken about that in the case of a gamal, is prohibited. And nothing similar to that in behema, in adam, would be prohibited. So that the who is now excluding both cholav ha'isha and dam ha'isha. The ein dam halchi shtayim tamei l'tor. So the Gemara is now using a logical, license to expand the miyut of who to exclude not only cholav isha but also dam of bnei adam. And if not for this drasha of who to expand the heter of bnei adam from cholav to include dam, we would have prohibited dam adam under the principle of no kula in behema, because all behemos are asur in dam. However, there is a case where you're not allowed to eat dam of a human being, and that's where the dam was porish, it came out of the body. So let's say, for example, you got cut, and you take your finger that got cut, and you put it in your mouth. You're allowed to be motzetz the dam, because dam ha'adam is mutter, and that's derived from the extra word who. But once the dam is porish, then we have what's called a maris ayin issue. It may look like the dam of a behema, and if someone sees you sucking that dam after it came out of your body, they may accuse you of drinking dam. Omer of sheishes afilu mitzvahs prisha einbo. With regard to the dam that hasn't yet come out of the body of a human being, there's not even a mitzvah prisha. That means even the rabbanon, you don't have to be porish. So let's go back to the case of Rabbi Eliezer. He says that after 24 months since the baby is born, if the baby drinks its mother's milk, that's called sheketz. Why is that so? Why should it be called sheketz? The Torah is matir, cholav ha'em. It's not a chefza d'isura. It's not like cholav ha'em etmeya. Lo kash. Hadid parish, hadid lo parish. When the Brisa was matir chol of isha from the miyud of who, that's a case where the cholav already was porridge, and you collected human milk, mother's milk, in a vessel. You're allowed to drink that. Even midrabanan, you're allowed to drink. There's no pre-show whatsoever, even derabanan. But the brisa that prohibits yinika after 24 months, that's the low porridge. That's where the milk was not collected outside the body of the mother, but rather it's being suckled from within the mother's body. And that was prohibited by the Rabbanan and is considered like Yomek Shekels. By the way, as we'll soon see in the Gemara, in the case of Dam, it's Pugfaket, just the opposite. Once the Dam is Poresh, then it's awesome. It's only the Dam that you're sucking from within the body and never was Poresh outside the body that's Mutter. And that's called Chilufo B'Dam, just the opposite. So in Cholav, when the cholav is collected outside the body, it's mutter, without any issur whatsoever. In the case of dam, when the dam is collected outside the body, it's also. In the case of cholav, sucking the milk after 24 months from within the mother's body is also, but sucking dam from within the body, that's called mitzitzas dam, that's mutter. Kidasanya, like we learned in a brayso. Dam shal gabe kikar. If human blood, let's say you took a bite and you had some gum issues, and the dam from your gums went into this loaf of bread, you take a look at the loaf and there's blood on it. You're not allowed to eat that bread as is. Gorero, he's got to first cut off that bloody spot on the bread, on the loaf. The ochlo, and only then he's allowed to eat it. But bein hashinayim, if there's dam still inside his mouth, bein hashinayim, then motzitzo v'eno choshesh. He's allowed to swallow that blood, sort of like suck it out, and there's no chashash even midrabanan. And by the way, this Gemara reminds me, I don't know if it's a fair analogy, of saliva. Let's say, for example, on Yom Kippur, are you allowed to swallow your saliva? Or do you have to spit it out? And I think the answer would be that if once saliva comes out of the body, it's like any mayan, you're not allowed to drink water on Yom Kippur. But if you were to suck it and swallow it while it's still inside your mouth, that would be mutter. Omar Mar, what about the Shita of Yeshua? In my Esvatanya, we have a brisa, a different brisa, that records Rabbi Yeshua Omer afilu chaviloso al kseifa. It seems that our Rabbi Yeshua puts the ceiling at 4 or 5 years old, but Rabbi Yeshua is quoted in a brisa as saying that you're allowed to be yodek to she could be meidekes, the child, even if he's much older. He's holding his knapsack on his shoulder. And the Gemara says, actually, at the age of 4 or 5, a child is already mature enough to carry a knapsack on his back. So that's equal to the shear of Chavilaso al Kseifa. It's all the same. Omer Rav Yosef Halacha Rav Yeshua, and we're going to permit nursing until the age of 4 or 5. Based on this, Rav Henkin allowed using contraception, if necessary, for a period of 4 years to allow for maximum nursing of the baby. Tanya, we went to the Bais of Marinus Omer, Gonech, Yonek, Cholav B'Shabbos. Gonech is someone who is crying out from pain, heart pain, chest pains. And the refuah for chest pains is drinking the milk of a goat. My father, Shalom, came from a town called Plisa, and in his community, everyone knew about my father's goat. My father's goat used to accompany him to Cheder, and he would tie up the goat outside of the Cheder, and when he came out of the Cheder, the goat would bring him back, would walk him back home, and the goy would not start up with him. It was a very powerful goat. I was raised on the stories of my father's goat. In any event, the milk of a goat, which by the way, even today is considered quite healthy compared to cow's milk, is a refuah, is medicinal for chest pains, for heart pains. Again, we're not talking about a case of pikuach nefesh, but pikuach nefesh, anything is mutter. But we're going to allow suckling from an aiz, from the udder of an aiz, on Shabbos. Now, this is a violation of one of two malachos. And there's a tremendous controversy about it. Our Gemara seems to assume one of these two opinions at superficial value. And that is meleches mefarek, which is a told of dash. Dash is listed in the 39 malachos in Shabbos Kol Gadol. And a told of dash is mefarek, and when you suck the milk out of the udders, according to this opinion, the milk is sort of embedded in the membrane, in the udders themselves, and you suck it out. That's called mefarek, that's dash. And then you get into the whole issue of yesh disha b'gdulei karka, ein disha elo b'gdulei karka. And l'chora, in this case, we're talking about an animal. An animal is not gedulei karka, so where's meleches dash? This is already a famous tshuva of Rabbi Avram ben Rambam, that as far as the tolda of dash is concerned, the tolda of dash applies even shelo b'gdulei karka. And there's another way of explaining our Gemara, that Yanika is a problem of meleches memachet, because when you suck from the udder, it softens the skin, which is a malacha doraisa amongst the Taryag. But our Gemara would reflect the shita of dash. My timer, the Gemara asks in a certain naive sense, why should this be allowed on Shabbos? We're not talking about pikuach nefesh. Again, he has pains and he wants to calm down his pains, but that doesn't override the malach of mefarek. And the Gemara says, "Kilachar yad u'makom tzara lo gozer rabbanan." This is not the normal situation of mefarek. Mefarek is when you take something and you break it open. Here he's suckling, and that's an isur d'rabbanan, and this is based on the principle called Meleches machsheves osra Torah. The Torah only prohibits malach when it's done in the normal way. Meleches machsheves, like a skilled worker. Om Rabbi Yosef halacha Rabbi Marunis, and we accept this halacha that gonech muter, a yonek, yanika of the milk of an aiz is muter on Shabbos b'makom tzar. Talia Nachum ish Gilia or Galia Omer Sinar sha'olbo kashkashim v'machan v'raglo b'tzina b'Shabbos. What happens is they have these gutters, sort of like pipes, that collect the water that accumulates on the roof of a building. And if they get clogged up, for example, let's say grass or straw gets backlogged on these pipes, and now the water cannot come down from the roof, and it accumulates rainwater on the roof, it starts seeping through the house. And that's called dulifa l'bayis, and that could ruin the entire roof. Imagine your house is inundated by rainwater. So what do you do on Shabbos? We have a problem of Shabbos of tikkun mana. We're not allowed to fix up something that's broken. So it seemed that if he would take his hands and remove the grass and all the dross that got clogged up there, that would be a violation of a malacha d'oraisa, which would be prohibited even b'makom hefsei meruba. But what Nachum, each Galia allows, he permits you to memachan, to crush the asavim with his feet. But he's only allowed to do that b'tzina if no one's looking. The Eno Choshesh, and there's not even an Issa D'Rabbanan in this case. So the Gemara immediately asks, my timer, how could you allow an Issa D'Rabbanan? Okay, I admit that breaking up this clogging, the clogged up grass and straw with your foot is called Kalachar Yad. Yet as we saw before in Gonef Yodeh, it's Shalom Kedarko, and therefore it's not Meleches Machshavas, but it's also D'Rabbanan. And if there's a hefsed, because the waters are going to just seep down through his roof as the backlog, then the Rabbanan did not prohibit it. Now the question is, okay, if you're telling me it's asur, and if we can't do it b'far hesya, then how is he allowed to do it b'tzina? We have a principle that kol makom shasur Rabbanan mishum maras ayin is asur afilu b'chadrei chadar. Even the privacy of your home, no one's looking, it's asur. But apparently, the makom pseida, and if the Isser in the worst case scenario, if somebody would see you and suspect you, would only be the Rabbanon, then the Rabbanon b'makom pseida would allow it b'tzina. So basically, we have three conditions that have to be checked off, have to be met to permit crushing with your feet this asavim and so forth, kashim, that backward. Number one, it's got to be using your foot as opposed to your hands. That's got to be kalachar yad. Number two, it has to be b'makom hefsed. And number three, it's got to be b'tzina. Rav Yosef halacha k'nochel mishkal. Now the Gemara goes back to the brisa that we spoke about, the age limit for Yanika. Perish. If the baby stopped nursing and took a break, and the baby is already 24 months, and even Rabbi Yeshua admits that you cannot resume the nursing. How long of a pre-ship period on Rabbi Yehuda bar Chaviva, on Shmuel, Shlosha Yom? A 3-day break is enough to gender this Easter of resuming the nursing because it's Kinot Yonik Sheker. According to the second tradition, Tani Rabbi Yehuda bar Chaviva, Kame Shmuel Shlosha Yom. In other words, it wasn't Rabbi Yehuda who said it in the name of Shmuel, but rather it was Rabbi Yehuda who said it in front of Shmuel, in the presence of Shmuel. Now we have the following issue. Her husband died, never, shortly after the baby was born. The baby's less than 2 years old. And she wants to get remarried. Once she gets remarried, we're afraid she'll become pregnant, and that will stop her ability, terminate her ability to feed the baby. But on the other hand, she really desperately wants to get married. The Brisa says, not only will we prohibit her for a period of time until the baby is 24 months old from Nisuin, from getting married to them, there will even prohibit Erison. That means even though she can't get pregnant if she's an Arusa, it was just from her perspective, seal and sign the marriage. But nevertheless, the Rabbanan made a gzera of Erison Atu Nisuin. If we're going to allow her to get married during this 24-month period during Erison, she'll come to clinch the marriage with Nisuin.